Hello students, this is Mrs. Lee. I will be reading the All I'll Ever Want Christmas Doll to you. This is part 2, so please turn your books to the appropriate page where you see the two sisters jumping rope and the sister looking out the window with the baby Betty doll. Having you is more fun than any old jump rope, I whispered to baby Betty. She blinked and I hugged her tight. I wonder what she's thinking. I wonder if she's thinking she'd like to have someone to talk to her and play house or play baby doll. I sang every Christmas carol I knew, from Joy to the World to Jingle Bells. Baby Betty was a good listener, but my sisters always sang harmony with me, and baby Betty couldn't sing a note. Oh well, I said, rocking her gently. Let's tell stories instead. I began with Goldilocks, followed by Little Red Riding Hood. When I finished, there was only silence. My sisters always clapped, but baby Betty couldn't move her hands. Maybe you'd like Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby. I tried and set in. At last, I got to my favorite part. In my best storytelling voice, I said, Brer Rabbit say, Tar Baby, you'd better speak like you got some sense, or I'll bop you upside your head. But that Tar Baby didn't say nothing. It sat there in the road looking dumb. That part always made Dessa giggle, but not baby Betty. That was one of my favorite stories that my mother told when I was a young girl. I eased to the window to sneak one peek at my sisters. They were making string sculptures. I wish I could do something more than sit around like a spot on a toad, I whispered, a little disgusted like. Baby Betty blinked. Okay, so we have a simile, and I guess baby Betty blinked would be alliteration. Having fun? Mama asked, pouring herself a cup of tea. I guess so, I replied. Then suddenly I got an idea. A party, I shouted. Baby Betty and I will have a tea party, same as Miss Florence, the lady you work for. Quickly, I spread a quilt over Mama's trunk, then placed an imaginary cup and saucer in front of my doll. After serving, I took a sip with my pinky finger raised. This is very, very delicious tea, isn't it, Miss Baby? I said properly. No answer. I tried again. I say, isn't this delicious tea? Baby Betty sat there. Could have been the Tar Baby herself. You'd better answer me, girl, I shouted. Nothing. Baby Betty was never going to utter a word. Okay, I said, throwing up my hands. If you don't want to play with me, then I don't want to play with you either. So there. And I stormed away. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yelling and fussing with a non-human object. I guess she's somewhat personified, Baby Betty. Through the window, I could hear Dessa and Eddie Bernice chattering, twittering, and sharing. I felt like a lone chickadee as I stood listening to my sisters hand-clap songs. Mama came over and put her arms around me. I think they miss you, she said. Doesn't seem like it. Why don't you ask them to your party? I don't think Baby Betty will mind. You don't? Mama just smiled. I didn't have to think about it long. I grabbed the doll and rushed outside. What do you want? We're busy, said Eddie Bernice. I kicked at the ground. Baby Betty wants you to come to our tea party, I said. She does? Dessa asked. I said. My sisters looked at each other. Who would get to pour the pretend tea first? Eddie Bernice asked. You would, I answered reluctantly. And who'd get to sit at the head of the tea table? Dessa put in, her arms folded across her chest. You would. I hugged Baby Betty. You know, she can't do much, I explained, but she sure is pretty. Baby Betty's eyelashes fluttered and we all giggled. Then I handed Baby Betty over. All the rest of Christmas Day, my sisters and I played with our doll. We sang Christmas carols in harmony and shared stories about Once Upon a Time. Dessa knew just when to laugh, and Eddie Bernice knew when to clap. We munched on peppermint candy and orange wedges and ate one raisin at a time so they'd last.
Buckhorn High students are dismissed for the day. Thank you.
But my favorite part was when I poured a pretend cup of tea, and with my baby finger crooked ever so daintily, I said, real prim and proper like, "Isn't this the best Christmas ever?" Now, when you go back to the front of this book, it has a note about the story. I would like for you to turn to the very front of the book and then flip it, and you have the cover and title page, and over to the left of that it says a note about this story. While researching my book, Stitchin' and Pullin', a non-fiction account about the quilters of Gee's Bend, I visited Boykin, Alabama, about 20 miles from historic Selma. Miss Mary Lee Bendoff, a musician and a gifted quilter, graciously allowed me to stay in her home, where we spent hours talking about life in the rural South. Remember, rural means country. When Miss Mary was growing up during the Great Depression, the all-black town was identified as the poorest place in America. She told me stories about the many hardships she and her family had endured and their struggle to survive in a segregated system that kept blacks locked in staggering poverty. Yet when I asked Miss Mary how her family celebrated Christmas, the memory made her laugh out loud. Before Santa Claus came to our house, Mama made us clean it from top to bottom, she said, her eyes sparkling. We stripped away the old newspaper that lined the walls and kept out winter winds, and put up fresh newspaper. One year, my sister and I got a store-bought doll. The excitement in her voice transported me back to that time and place, and I, too, experienced the happiness of opening that gift. It was from Miss Mary's brief recollection of her memorable Christmas doll that the idea for this book began to grow. Jerry Pinkney's illustrations add another layer of interpretation to the telling through bright images that seem animated, alive, and vibrant. From the early scene where the family is repapering the walls with newspaper to the soft glow of the last picture, in which the children drink make-believe tea, Jerry has created a special family whose home, though poor, is filled with the richness of the holiday. We hope you wrap yourself up in the warmth of the season as you share this story of hope and love. Happy reading.